Hello everyone, and real quick before we get into the fantasy news, I want to make a quick apology because I think over the last year or so, especially for fantasy news, without ever really intending to, I've started more and more just trying to focus on covering stories I thought would get views or get people's attention, rather than what I thought was actually the most interesting or valuable fantasy news of the day. It's not even that much of a substantial change, but it's something that really means a lot to me because when I started fantasy news, the entire point was to cover stories about a genre that I deeply love that I didn't see getting as much attention, especially back when I started this series before the fantasy adaptation wave brought it all to the front of pop culture. It's not the biggest deal, and I don't think it'll change fantasy news a ton in the future, but I'm going to be trying to make an effort to going back and covering the stuff that I just think needs more attention or I personally have a lot to say about. Obviously, if there's big stories, I'm still going to cover them if they're relevant. I feel like I've been trained inadvertently by constantly looking at the YouTube app to just think that numbers mean quality on this platform, and I know that's not the case, and it's not what I want to focus on. It's also partially the reason why I've continued to do manga videos so much. They don't do the best numbers for me, but I feel like it's the best quality content I've put out, and I'm really enjoying it. So you have to kind of always balance that out as a YouTuber, and I just don't feel like I've done the best job of it recently. I'm going to try and do better. But without any further ado, did you know the fantasy news must flow? Welcome everybody to another episode of Fantasy News. I am your disheveled goblin host who can do this entire intro without thinking about it too much because I've said it so many times in the past, Daniel Green, and today we have the genuinely most interesting stories I thought of the day. And we're gonna be going ahead and kicking things off with a cover reveal, because Pierce Brown's next book, Lightbringer, has officially been posted online. Now this cover fits right on in with the Red Rising series general design. While it's not personally my favorite style, I do like how consistent this series is and how good it looks on a shelf when put together. Yes, I'm shallow, judge me! And if I had a nickel for every time something within sci-fi or fantasy was named Lightbringer, I would have 3 nickels. Just an observation. I'm aware this was leaked actually last week. I just personally didn't want to cover a leak like that because I've had stuff leak as an author, and I know it can kind of suck for it to continue to spread and not be able to share a release of a cover yourself with your fans. So while I will cover some types of especially bigger industry leaks here in fantasy news, for something that's like a cover art where the author obviously really would prefer to be able to release it to their fans in the lens they would like, I'll probably not spread that if it happens. Speaking of bigger entertainment news though, it has been confirmed that the House of the Dragons production is submitting for the Emmys consideration both the performances of Patty Considine and Emma Darcy. I absolutely loved Emma Darcy's portrayal this season. I would not be surprised if they get an Emmy. I think they came in with a disadvantage to the show in mid-season after the time skip, and seeing them win over the fans so successfully is truly impressive. And when it comes to Patty, I will be absolutely shocked if he does not get the Emmy, because I think his performance was the strongest of House of the Dragon. Debate me! And here I am realizing that Bob Odenkirk is also going to be up for this year, and with the last season of Better Call Saul being as good as it was, I also want him to win, but I also want to preach that award shows don't matter, and so I'm conflicted in all kinds of ways. But we're going to jump from Emmy news to adaptation news, because we have gotten our first look at the adaptation of Octavia Butler's Kindred. And after watching the trailer, I realized I thought I had read Kindred, I had read a different one of Octavia Butler's books, and confused the titles again. What is wrong with my brain? That being said though, it means I have an excuse to start another Octavia Butler book, which is always a good thing, and I'll probably be reading it over the weekend when I go to Dragonsteel in Utah. Interesting side note, the showrunner Brendan Jacob Jenkins has mostly been known for being a playwright before. While he's previously been a consulting producer on things like Outer Range and Watchmen, this is their first time taking up the lead producer and showrunner role, and I'll be really curious to see how it goes off, and also be over-analyzing how they were a playwright before this affected the show, because that's how the human brain works. But hey, for this next story, I have a question for you. Do you like to be teased? Well, if you do, you'll be happy to look at this tweet from the Studio Ghibli account, which teased us all with a potential collaboration between them and Lucasfilms. What this is? No idea, but it did immediately make me go, I want Ghibli Jedi. Please give me Ghibli Jedi, please. And some people saying this might actually just be that, oh, Studio Ghibli's gonna be doing one of season 2 of Star Wars Visions, and if that's the case, it's still cool and I'll definitely watch it, but I really hope it's something bigger, and I'd love to be right, but if I'm proven wrong, still cool. Now, my absolute dream for what this collaboration between Lucasfilms and Studio Ghibli turns out to be is somehow Studio Ghibli gets put in charge of like creating an Old Republic film that's canon and kicks off like a new era of high quality animated Star Wars taking place back in that time. That would be amazing. It's probably not that, but could it be? And in another last-minute fantasy news reshoot, this is going to be the hodgepodge version of fantasy news. We have a release date for an upcoming untitled Avatar: The Last Airbender movie, and it will be October of 2025. Now, back in June, we found out that there are planned 3 animated Avatar: The Last Airbender films being produced by a combination of Paramount, Avatar Studios, and Netflix, and this is just the first one of those movies. But it's completely separate from the live-action adaptation that's happening at Netflix that the creators kind of notoriously now broke away from. Which kind of takes me to asking a pretty obvious question here, and one I think I know the answer to, but hey, I might be surprised. Are you more excited for the live-action adaptation of Avatar coming over at Netflix, or are you more excited for this trilogy of animated movies that'll apparently be getting a wide release for at least the first one, hopefully the rest, coming from Avatar Studios? Back to the hoodie stuff. Oh, creature design? Did you mention creature design? Well, for this next story, smooth transition, Guillermo del Toro posted on his, Guillermo del Toro posted on his Instagram a decades-old ILM creation that apparently was a part of the development process for At the Mountains of Madness. For those of you who don't know, this is an abandoned project that apparently del Toro was trying to get done a long time ago, and I don't think this is the most like revolutionary or incredible piece of test footage until you realize this is a decade old. Looking this good for just a test thing at a decade old, pretty neat. And the creature design really makes me think of Mass Effect? Maybe Dead Space and Mass Effect together? I like it. It's a cool creature design with its little tentacle vagina belly. We also got the release for Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio trailer. It looked very good, and I'm definitely going to be watching this on Netflix. I know stop motion's not for everybody, but this looks like really great stop motion. But we're going to leave Guillermo del Toro with his vagina tentacle monster and move on to some video game news, because it's also been confirmed that yes, the rumors were true, and Gears of War will be getting actually 2 adaptations. One will be a live-action adaptation, and the other is an adult animated series, both in the works over at Netflix. And to this guy who immediately commented that he hopes Dave Bautista is going to be involved, apparently the creator agrees with you. And in a last-minute fantasy news update, not really, I just didn't catch it till 30 minutes before fantasy news went live, Dave Bautista posted to their Instagram an ad spot they did in collaboration with Xbox and Gears of War some time ago with the caption, "I can't make this any easier." Here's the clip.
This is my kind of It's about time.
And so, yes, in my opinion, it's looking extremely likely that Dave Bautista will be involved with either the live-action film coming over at Netflix and the animated series they're working on as well. Netflix collaborating with a large star who has a history as a superhero to bring a sci-fi fantasy video game adaptation to the screen. Witcher also had books, but like still, just kind of like history repeat itself very quickly. And I'm gonna be honest, when I first heard Netflix video game adaptation, live-action movie, I was kind of like, but Dave Bautista being involved has me more like, because I'm down to watch Dave Bautista take a chainsaw gun to some aliens, even if it's not a great movie. That just sounds fun. But let me know what you think of it and which one you're more excited for, the live-action film or the animated series, in the comments down below. But continuing down the alley of multiple adaptations, we have also received the trailer and poster for the upcoming Witcher Blood Origins. Now, I will already be watching this no matter what, because 1, it's my job, and 2, Michelle Yeoh, instant yes for me. But I'll be honest, I didn't necessarily love the shooting style and the overall look of the trailer. I'm hoping this is just a result of the continual trend of more and more studios being willing to put unfinished edits in their trailers, which I hate, and it will look much better upon release. But something about this just felt very like Scorpion King to me, which is not the best thing to say in 2022. Though I think the amount of dislikes this getting isn't necessarily because the way the trailer looks, and it's a lot of people who are still just upset with the Henrico replacement, which is something that is looking worse and worse for Netflix as more and more is coming out about it. I want to talk about the discussion that's going on online right now around whether or not Rings of Power was a success for Amazon. The show certainly had an impressive first episode viewership. We know it trended down. A lot of shows trend down in viewership as the season goes on. Some shows are lucky enough to go up, but that's not even really the conversation I'm interested in when it comes to, quote, the Rings of Power's success, unquote. I'm more interested in the Lord of the Rings franchise and how the Rings of Power debacle can affect the IP in the long run, because I don't think Rings of Power, no matter how bad or good you think it is, could really do much to change the everyday view of Lord of the Rings. The reputation for the series is essentially bulletproof, and I do think it's important to note that most franchises do not have as bulletproof a reputation as Lord of the Rings, and I'm not trying to advocate that, oh, mediocre, bad, controversial adaptations are fine for anything, because they're always just going to bring more interest. That's not the case. Lord of the Rings is on this one extreme end of the spectrum where you can really dislike an adaptation of it, but 100 years from now, Lord of the Rings is still going to be viewed as Lord of the Rings. And if you take something that's completely unknown, give it a high budget adaptation, it's terrible, and yeah, you're probably going to end up really hurting the long run chances of that series taking off, because people are going to go, why would I pick that up? There's this horrible show. But those are the extremes, and it's really hard to answer the middle ground of things that weren't already just universally known among the human race, like Lord of the Rings is typically, how adaptations really affect their legacy. And I know that's like a niche topic, but it's one that really interests me, and I might make a whole video in the future about how various adaptations have affected the sales and long-term impression for various series within the sci-fi fantasy space, and I'll decide whether or not to do that video depending on the comments down below if people are interested in it or not. And I might want to wait a couple years until a few more examples are out there. I always get a little nervous though when I start talking about like the numbers side of science fiction and fantasy, because I don't know if everyone's nerddom follows me from being a fan of the series to the fans of the stats around the series, though judging by how good the breakdown's been doing, at least a fair lot of you are with me. But this has just been your latest episode of Fantasy News. Like and subscribe if you have not already, and hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. I got books, I got merch, and have a good one, y'all. Peace.